It seems like every couple of years, DC tries to shove the Suicide Squad brand down the throats of the mainstream audience, and each time they do, it is met with rather poor reception. Credit where it's due, you have to admire the sheer tenacity they have trying over and over again to make this series a hit, but they never quite seem to hit the mark. And in comes the new Suicide Squad Isekai trying to challenge and go against its ancestors, but unfortunately never does quite break out from the bad adaptation curse that comes with the franchise. So let's see what this series is all about, what makes it such a miss, and the things I think it manages to do well. God, I hope YouTube doesn't flag or age restrict this video because of the word suicide. Like, come on YouTube, it's literally the name of the anime. Well, only one way to find out. So, Suicide Squad Isekai is a rather interesting case. It wouldn't be the first time we got anime adaptations of Western comic book series. Like, come on, many people actually remember or even know about the Wolverine anime. Those have been mostly forgotten, but where Suicide Squad has the advantage in is coming at a time where anime has become widely mainstream, which means more people will get to see it. The series is one that is in such a unique position, bridging the gap between comic book fans and anime fans, and thanks to its equally unique premise, on paper, could make for a wild viewing experience, but that never really happens. Suicide Squad Isekai asks the question of what happens when you take some batshit insane criminals and throw them into a fantasy world for them to go crazy in? Well, its answer to that is not a lot apparently. So Amanda Waller opens up a portal to another world and sends a bunch of criminals to do some recon, establish connections with the locals there, and see if they can harvest the resources from that world. But those guys, being criminals, ditch the mission almost immediately, and so she sends in the Suicide Squad, consisting of I Can Fix Her, Soga King, John Cena, Reverse Shark Boy, and Muzan, who find themselves in a new world filled with all the fantasy tropes you've come to expect from the genre. When I first saw the anime's announcement, I was honestly intrigued at how they could take the premise of a bunch of crazy people, slap them onto an isekai, and see what cool things they would do with it. Being done by Wit Studio nonetheless meant this wouldn't just come out as a measly cash grab to cash in on the anime trend. Needless to say, I approached this with cautious optimism, and for what it was worth, this series had a pretty solid start. The first two episodes were great, really leaning into the craziness you would expect from something like this. King Shark is out there eating everyone, there was a friggin' dance number right in the middle of a prison break, and then there was Peacemaker. Yeah, this series, in my eyes, was on track to be an amazing watch. But then it kind of just stops. Because after like the first 3 episodes, the series starts to come off as not being entirely sure what to do with itself and its characters. It feels like the writer saw the overabundance of isekai and thought, hey, they have so much, people must like them a lot, so let's do that. They watched a few isekai, probably not the good ones, and went on to make this. The anime doesn't quite understand the genre it's trying to assimilate on a fundamental level, which in turn leads it into coming off as half-baked. We're given these interesting characters, only to have them placed in the most generic isekai fantasy world ever. A world that has nothing interesting to it, stuck in a lame fantasy war with boring fantasy politics. Which creates a big clash in tones, especially when it goes from balls to the walls action to a bunch of old people who I'm not sure have any names, sitting around talking about the same thing every time we cut to them. The world is also devoid of any real world building. When you hear the word isekai, you expect at least a certain level of world building to accompany it. But in the confines of the anime, it only serves to give us a backdrop for the characters to fight elves and dragons. And that's just about it. This in turn led me to start drowning out everything that wasn't the action or wasn't related to the main characters. And making it even worse was the almost non-existent story and structure. They land in the new world, fight some monsters, get sent into jail, break out of jail, fight a mind-controlled army, fight a dragon, fight a new mind-controlled army, get sent back to jail, break out of jail, go fight that second mind-controlled army again, and as of the 9th episode, they fight an undead army controlled by the Big Bad, whose goal is just to kill everything because it makes her stronger. And let me tell you, they spend way too much time in jail. It sucks because there's so much potential in the story, but it whiffs it at every chance it gets, cause the anime doesn't really do anything with its unique premise, and at the same time somehow ends up butchering isekai as a whole. The series doesn't even try to parody or satirize the genre, but painfully plays into and poorly executes what makes Isekai so interesting to those that actually enjoy it. It's a shame considering this is supposed to be like a meld of comic book and anime culture. You can tell that they really wanted to get the attention of the wider anime audience, from waifurizing Harley to the naming of the series. And let's talk about that actually. Suicide Squad Isekai to me is such a boring name with a lot of missed opportunities. There could have been so many ways they could have named this, like In Another World with my crazy supervillain team, or The villains are forced to become the good guys in another world, or my personal favorite, the bad guy squad are sent to another world to become heroes and reluctantly save the kingdom in order to build establishments, or else their heads will explode. How would we keep the crazy clown lady in check? That is peak right there. But story aside, the other thing that doesn't really vibe with me is the art and animation. This is not Wit Studios' best work. A lot of the anime looks pretty ugly. Aside from Harley and Clayface, a lot of the characters constantly look bad and the backgrounds are no better. The way they are drawn, even when static, come off as a bit much, looking really rough with the lighting and shadows making things really uncanny and inconsistent. The worst offender of this has to be Deadshot, who looks slightly different every time he's on screen, which is really jarring and distracting. And oftentimes it felt like the animation was just doing the most, especially in the action scenes. From a technical standpoint, the animation is amazing, but there's just so much fidelity in them that it results in the actions falling into so good it's almost bad territory. Like any action scene with King Shark throwing hands always looks uncomfortable. I can't quite put my finger on why the animation rubs me the wrong way, but the simplest word I could use to describe it would be over-designed. But it does help to add to the craziness the anime is trying to convey, as unrefined as it is. Suicide Squad Isekai is painfully okay. A bit on the bad side actually. However, I think its saving grace would be the squad themselves. They have a lot of good chemistry on screen and bounce off each other really well. All their interactions always end up being fun to watch. Making it better is the fact that all of them are pretty much assholes who most of the time like to do their own things, reminding you that they are in fact criminals. I just wish they were put in a much better setting that was able to make them shine even more. But what about you guys? What are your thoughts on the anime? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.